Hello, my loves. Today we're going to be talking about true magnetism and the difference between that and that kind of false magnetism. I want to call it like this kind of charismatic, over exciting, alluring FOMO energy that we sometimes see out there, luring you in. And why is it luring you in? So yeah, firstly, magnetism. Magnetism is something that I think people think is always this exerted. You can tell me in the comments as well if you feel like this, but it often looks like this person that is very flamboyant. They've got all those, beautiful style, crazy clothes and bright colors, and that magnetism is, very like overtly sexual, and alluring in that way. Or, there's some kind of, we probably look at more like celebrities as this idea of these magnetic forces, because people feel very alert and attracted into the little world of these people. And I want to talk about magnetism from a perspective of energy, of life force, of soul embodiment, right? Because I think magnetism is truly, actually, when it's authentic, it's when someone's so deeply centered in themselves that they know themselves, they feel really connected to who they are, to that eternal part of them. And that is what doesn't waver, right? And because of that centering, it just allows all that soul remembrance, all that soul expression to just be pouring and circulating through that person. So when you're in that space yourself, you'll feel that whatever someone is saying kind of outside of you, it doesn't change who you are. If someone was to say something about you, it wouldn't change how you think about yourself, because you have remembered and understand who you are, right? And that creates a really big magnetism, creates this big life force energy that just is just there in your auric field, that people can recognize and feel that within you, right? They feel that, and actually it creates an energy signature that of a remembrance of their divinity, that then other people can experience that within that field of that person. And yourself, if you're holding that, the people around you will have that opening and experience for themselves, right? And so if you are experiencing that, you don't necessarily need to worry about what it is you're wearing, what it is you're doing, the kind of people that you're around, because that energy is already centered within you. And it can create different experiences with people, but it shouldn't be the thing. We shouldn't have to do something outside of ourselves to create anything different outside of ourselves, if that makes sense. So I hear a lot out there in these, maybe self-help kind of talks and community, spiritual type communities, with this sort of everything's like this mirror on the outside to you. And what I want to say is, we are all one, right? So we can't say because someone's living in a more poverty driven place that this is a reflection of them and what the things that they have to work on, because I don't think that's necessary. I think it's also about how that person sees themselves and experiences themselves in that situation, because one person could be in the exact same situation and one will feel magnetic and alive and in their soul embodiment, and another person will be in turmoil and be in deep depression and feel like nothing's working out for them and everything's against them, right? So we can have those both experiences. We can simultaneously be dancing between those experiences in the same experience. And then you begin to realize, well, it's not what's outside of me, it's only how I'm interpreting it through me. So we get to make that choice. It's something I always say. So one of my sayings that help me out of situations and help me to come back to my magnetism is, this doesn't define me. So when something's really causing an issue, when I feel like, when there's something that maybe makes me feel like I'm failing or whatever, I think this doesn't actually define me, okay? Right? So if your bank balance, for instance, which is one, gets really low and you're in a panic and then you think, I feel like such a failure, my money's all going. That doesn't define me though. It doesn't define me from being a divine infinite soul, what my bank balance looked like. It doesn't define me if I get sacked from my job. I think I spoke about some situations I had like that over the years, and I had to kind of go, it doesn't define me. When I would love to rewrite, I've rewritten it, but I wish I had this word when I was at school, when I was getting very low GCSEs, getting low grades, because I was dyslexic and I struggled with all those things. And even dyslexia, I have to say, doesn't define me. It doesn't define how divine I am. It doesn't define who I get to be, my worth, right? And those things can shift your magnetism, because if you don't feel worthy, if you don't feel good, if you don't feel beautiful, if you don't feel successful, then there is no magnetism there, because your energy is gone, because you don't feel that you deserve it, because it's your energy. It's actually your energy. When you say, I am worthy, I am beautiful, I am successful, and look for those things, that starts to bring that energy and life force in, because you're like, oh yeah, like, oh, there it is, and there's more proof of more things that improve the soul essence of who you are, because you've got more proof of it, and it starts to show up more in your life, and then you start to see more of it. Now, another thing I want to show you that relates to this is how we make little choices in our lives that correlate to this. So, really funny little example that I had in my head today was, if you're so in your center of who you are and your soul and your divinity, if you was in a room with a bunch of friends or colleagues and you're all making, someone out of that group is making cups of tea, and then they bring out all these biscuits, and you don't want a biscuit, and a few other people don't want a biscuit, but a few people do, and this person has made these biscuits and they want you to have the biscuit. That's their agenda, right? That's their energy. They're excited. Yes, that's their biscuit. But what are you going to do? If you take the biscuit, even though you don't want to have it, and not eating a biscuit you don't want to have, that is going to take you out of your alignment. It's really simple. And then you think, oh, why did I have the biscuit? I didn't want the biscuit. They wanted the biscuit. And then you start spiraling about the biscuit. Whereas you could just go, no, thank you. I really appreciate you making these biscuits. Those who want biscuits or have biscuits, I'm good. And then you feel good. You feel centered. You feel grounded in who you are and your choices. And when we make choices from that centeredness of like knowing exactly what we want, it creates more direction of that energy. And it's like when we make those little simple things in the quantum field, in our own energy, through our guide system, our soul, the universe, through God, like whatever you want to call it, however you connect, that is you saying, I know myself, and I'm listening. I'm listening to the energy that is running through me, and I'm allowing it to direct me. And when that starts directing me, then you start to have more of it, because it's just growing and expanding within you. And that's all that magnetism really is. It's not some big fancy thing. It's not actually what you wear. It's not actually what you do. You may start to notice that those things change because you are listening to that. But we don't need to do those things first, because what I've noticed is we might start to do that first coming from the same wound of wanting to come across a certain way, because a lot of the root is all about appearance. It's all about, and I said this in another video, about identity. So there's true inner soul identity, which is the magnetism of our life force, and then there is the false identity of what we think we need to be for other people to accept and love us, for us to get the success, the beauty, the XYZ, right? Whatever we need to get. And a survival mechanism is to try and get the things that we need. We want to try and create an environment for that. So if you live in a community of people where they all wear a certain thing, and that makes them, a bunch of people are all successful. Like, we could look at this like a whole big thing, isn't it, about men with watches, the whole Rolex thing and stuff like that. So people will get something like that, or get a car or whatever, to be like, look, I'm successful now, I have the watch. But is it what do they actually feel underneath that? Do they feel the thing once they actually have the watch? Does it really accomplish what they really need? No, the real root need is something much, much deeper than that. So we must reach into that first, and then, what do you actually need? What does your soul really desire? And it will come and pick up and make choices from that place, and it will just be a completely different experience. You might still end up with the watch, but it'll be a completely different energetic exchange, because everything is coming from this energetic exchange. When we see, feel and sense that, become more aware of that and how that's navigated and working in the quantum field, we will have a different experience of it, and we'll start to realize what those things mean to us and what they're really doing. And when we make that choice from the other perspective, the survival perspective, the wounded ego perspective, we might end up finding more dissatisfaction, feeling more severed, and feel like these parts are more fragmented because of that, right? So I hope this is making sense for you. Just do let me know how that lands. Now, the charismatic side of things, and I see this mostly in, of course, the more business mindset kind of coaching industry. Again, it's a lot of this excitement energy. It's a lot of this exterior of having everything together. And how you kind of witness this from the outside perspective of looking how someone else might be displaying that is through, giving you this sense of FOMO, giving you this sense that, like, this is what I've got. And, in order for you to get what I've got, you need to kind of come over here and be in this arena with me. And usually it's paying a high price for it, right? Because it's a high frequency thing. It's a energetic exchange, at the highest. This is how the magnetic is. Whereas really magnetism, you don't need any money for it. It's free. It's life force. It's energy. And yeah, maybe in this world, in this physical reality, we feel we need an exchange for that. But how we perceive that will determine from the place where we are. So if we're coming from that survival need, lack, we might get drawn into the false sense of magnetism around us. This is how we become also more susceptible to people selling ideas, belief systems to us and feeding into that, rather than feeding into ourselves, into our truth and into our sovereignty and into our eternal beingness, because we haven't found that within ourselves. We don't realize it's already there. We're still looking for it outside. So that's why we keep buying into the courses and so on, right? And I've been there, I've done that. Even recently I did like just a little course thing that I'd joined, and maybe I was just a little bit curious, but I was like, this is just completely reminding me of what what I know to be true is where there's false energy that creates this false sense of, I've got this beautiful golden ball of magnetism over here, come and get it, towards something different where I go, actually I just need to go and sit with a tree. I'll go sit with a tree and I feel magnetic and I feel alive. I'll have my dance, I'll put my music on and I'll have a dance. That gets me centered and in alignment with myself. Breathing, connecting in, feeling, sensing myself, and remembering to make choices that feel really aligned and good for me rather than outside, what I'm told outside, or what kind of conditioning that I may have from childhood, from society, from friends, because we will carry those imprints, and until we actually decode them from ourselves, and also sometimes it's not about being able to completely get rid of them, but it's about being able to observe them, know when they come up, when we feel and sense them, and knowing the difference between that and the soul resonance. And when we follow the thread of the soul resonance, then it becomes more alive, more light, more joyful and easeful in our lives. We won't have to keep going through all these mazes, hitting all the dead ends, because we're trying to follow the path that someone else is paving for us, rather than following what our heart is guiding us through. Again, it sounds like choice needs to be made, but it really is just about understanding the feeling and the sensing, and then listening and guiding with that, which is all you need to really do to feel that energy in life. Just, you don't need to buy anything, you don't need to do anything, right? Outside of you, it's all about what you're noticing and sensing within yourself. And I do have a practice that you can follow, which is the heart practice, which is a really great one, which I'll put a link below about that. And it does show you how to do that, how to listen to the feelings and the sensations. And the experience itself can be quite profound if you've not done something before, but when you start to really fully listen, you do start to notice also sometimes those voices and things that have not been you for a while, and then we can start to accept them and go, okay, I see you, I feel you, I understand you, why you were there. And then you start to cultivate a clearer voice of your true self knowing. So this is one of the practices that I follow and I do because it has immensely helped me to center within myself, right? We've all been there. We've all listened to someone on an Instagram post. We've all listened to, our mother's advice. We've all listened to, doing just credit to mothers. But they might have different ideas about life to how we do. Schooling, the list goes on, and it just can send us all on different journeys when really we want to just feel in with what's going on with us, right? So I hope this has been really helpful, and I'd love to hear how this lands for you.